Hello. I'm going to read a story from um, one of the Montessori great lessons, which is the coming of writing. Children love to hear the great stories every year. And the coming of writing is a wonderful one because it's telling the children why writing is important and how it came about. And one of the stories that I'm going to read to you is from a book called The Great Well of Time or The Deep Well of Time, I'm sorry, and it's by Michael Dorr. He's a famous Montessorian who I've had the pleasure of meeting and even getting to take out to dinner. He wrote this book, The Deep Well of Time, and in it he has amazing stories for oral storytelling. So when I tell this story to the children, I don't use a book. I just try to remember it. And so I will read to you what he wrote, but when I tell the story to the children, I do not use any sort of text whatsoever. All right. This is called The Piece of Paper That Sees and Speaks. And I do this in the fall with my Green River class. I tell the story to you guys. And so you get to hear it via video. This story tells of a master gardener, Phyllis, who wants to send some fruit to a friend named Albert. To do this, she employs a young lad from a nearby village. The child cannot read, so he doesn't know why Phyllis includes a piece of paper along with the fruit. Eventually, the fruit is delivered twice, and the use of reading is revealed. The piece of paper that sees and speaks makes use of dramatic irony. The children in the class realize what is going on even when the child in the story does not. The audience relishes this knowledge. Sometimes they may even want to say what is going on as if to tell the character what is happening. This story is a traditional Montessori story that goes back many years. No one seems to be certain who it was that first told the story, but it has changed extensively. So I always change it too. I change it to use a children's name in my class because that makes it more meaningful. And of course, we are always trying to gain meaningful context with our students. But for this reading, since you are all adults, I will just use the name that he used. Here it is. Once upon a time in a faraway land, there lived a talented gardener. Now, her name was Phyllis, and Phyllis loved to garden. Oh, she had the most beautiful gardens. Phyllis had flowers that were impressive with lovely blossoms. They were wonderful, and the delightful scent, the beauty. Phyllis had vegetables that were luscious and delicious. They were beautiful as well. She had asparagus with great feathery fronds and beans that climbed high poles. There were tubers, roots, and stems of all sorts that were wondrously edible. Of all of her plants, Phyllis was most famous for her fruits. She had fruits that made people come from all around just to see them. Deep red strawberries, luscious plums, dark green melons, tasty pears, but most of all, Phyllis had delicious peaches. Phyllis grew peaches that were unheard of in any other garden anywhere nearby. Each beautiful golden globe carried a scent of heaven. The beauty of the peaches' shading and color was only exceeded by their magnificent taste. Oh, these peaches were so wonderful, so huge, and so excellent, but they only came at one certain time a year. So if one were there, perhaps if one were very, very lucky, Phyllis might share her peaches. She might give you a peach. Then you would be in heaven, for those were the peaches beyond any you've ever experienced. One day, at the time when the peaches were ripening on the trees and they were laden with scent and they were heavy with fruit, Phyllis summoned a young boy in the village nearby. She said, I have a gift. I have a gift for my friend Albert, who lives some distance down the road. Can you please carry this gift to my friend for a small token of my friendship? The child was happy to do so. So Phyllis took a basket out to her orchard where she carefully plucked 12 beautiful, perfect peaches. The bouquet arose like a scented perfume, an exotic aroma from the Orient that filled her nostrils with loveliness. Phyllis was also filled with happiness that her friend Albert would soon be receiving these magnificent peaches. She carried the peaches back to her house in the basket and covered them completely with a clean, white, folded linen cloth. The boy was watching her as she did this. Then, at the last minute, she thought of something. And she picked up a piece of papyrus or paper and something like a crayon. On the paper, she made some sort of marks. She made marks on the paper, folded it up closely, and put the paper under the cloth. Then she gave the basket with the peaches and the paper covered by the cloth to the child, and he took them and off he went on his long journey to Albert's house. As he walked along, it turned out that it became a very warm day, and the heat of the sun beat down. He was strong and young, but he kept on walking. But the sun was also heating up the peaches, and they were giving off this delicious scent. Oh, he could smell those peaches. He really wanted one, but no, he couldn't do that. Soon he came to a large rock by the side of the road. It was a great stone casting a shadow, and he felt this might be a good place to sit for a while and rest in the shade and cool off a little bit. As he sat there with the basket next to him, he thought, well, who's going to know if I take one peach? I mean, how will Albert even know? I'll just be very careful. Who would know? I'll just take one. And before his thinking was soon over, he noticed that he had already opened the cloth so he could admire the beauty of the peaches. And then he thought, well, it really wouldn't hurt to take one in my hand and just feel it for a little bit. So he reached out to take a peach, and he noticed the piece of paper, but he thought, who cares? So he took the peach, and you know what happened? He sunk his teeth into it. Oh, once that had happened, he thought he might as well eat the whole peach. So he ate the peach, and it was indeed just as delicious, just as juicy, just as heavenly as he had thought. When he was done, he cleaned up, put the paper back in the basket, covered the basket with a linen cloth, and went on his way. Now, when he reached Albert's house much later in the day, he presented Albert with his gift, saying, "This is from your friend Phyllis, who has grown these beautiful peaches for you." Albert was so delighted. He took the basket, opened it up, took out the piece of paper, looked at it, and then he finally looked at the child, and he said, I see you must have eaten one. How did he know? How could he know? How could he know that? There's only one way, thought the child. That piece of paper must see and speak. It must have seen what I did, and then it somehow spoke to Albert. And he mulled this over all the way back to his home. How could a piece of paper see and speak? Well, it was only a few days later when Phyllis called the boy one more time. It turns out she had another fine crop of peaches, and once again she had filled another basket for her friend Albert. Would you again, please, as a small token of my friendship, please carry this basket to my friend Albert, as you did before? And the child said, yes. The same thing happened. She went to the orchard. She plucked the peaches. She put them in the basket, and she covered them with the beautiful white linen cloth. Once again, she took a piece of paper and made marks upon it. Then she put that piece of paper folded into the basket. Once again, the young boy started on his long walk, and once again, the hot sun shone from above and made the peaches smell wonderful. And he found that rock, and he sat down in the shade, and he remembered that he had stopped there before. He looked at the basket of peaches, and he thought, well, somehow this last time Albert knew. And he thought about this, and he remembered it was that piece of paper, I think. So he opened up the basket and very carefully took the piece of paper out and set it off to the side. He put a big rock on top of it so that it couldn't see what he was about to do. And then he was ready. He carefully selected a beautiful ripe peach. It was perfect, and he ate the whole thing. He cleaned up and covered the basket back up, and only then, after he had cleaned everything up, did he take the piece of paper out from under that rock. And he slid it back inside the basket under the cloth. It couldn't have seen a thing, so he thought he was fine. With a great deal of joy in his heart, he went on all the way to Albert's house, knowing that that piece of paper had not seen what he had just done. When he arrived at Albert's house, Albert happily opened up the package, looked under the linen, took out the piece of paper, and looked at it. Then he said again, "I see that you've eaten another peach. I hope it was delicious." How could he know? How? The piece of paper couldn't see. It had been covered up. All the way home, he troubled himself with this question until he got back to the village and he spoke to his father. He told his father, "Phyllis has a magic paper." So they gathered their most precious possessions to give to Phyllis so she would give them a magic paper. The next day, they went to see Phyllis and said, "Please, wise lady, you have a magic gift. You have a mysterious gift. You teach paper to see and speak. Can we buy the secret from you? Can we somehow pay you to teach us the magic, to teach us this wonderful gift?" As the boy and his father explained what had happened, and as they told her about the piece of paper that sees and speaks, she smiled at them and said, "This gift is beyond any price that I could name. This is a gift that I shall not sell, but I shall give for free, because all people should have this gift, for it allows you to make papers around the world speak to you. This is the gift called reading. And that gift I shall give to you from my heart. I shall give it to your village and your people without charge, fully from my heart, for it's something that all of us should have and will give all of us great pleasure. It will give you pleasure just as it has me." And you know what? That's exactly what she did. And everyone in the village learned to read and write, just as you shall in our school, boys and girls. This is why you come to school, so we can all learn how to read and write. It's a gift that just keeps giving. It will give a gift your whole life. And it says here, and this is a true story, and if it isn't, it should be. So this is a wonderful way to excite children with a story about why reading and writing is so important. And when you're telling the story, children are listening. So we will be talking a lot about listening skills and how listening crosses over into comprehension. So thank you for listening to my story.